What's going on, guys? So, this week is already heading to be something exciting, and then we could already tell that Trump is stirring the pot with saying fake news. It's just insane, right? Over the weekend, this is why paying attention to news headlines is just extremely important. All right, guys. So, I just want to get you guys with this video right away. This is our weekly prep, so we could understand that tariffs has been just the main focus of New York session in general, right? And it's been leading all the way towards Asian session. So last week, we Trump came out with a 90-day pause on tariffs, but he's also adding 25% tariffs on China, right? Because China is also retaliating, adding tariffs on the US. So it's just a huge bicker battle. Like, is it going to end? We don't know. I feel like this is just a game of I just feel like these people are just, I don't want to say it, but greed is what controls the markets, right? And we got to understand that politics is involved. There's people making money out of this, and it kind of seems like the whales, the hedge funds, institutions, that they're making a killing off of this, while retail traders are getting killed because they don't really understand what to pay attention to, right? Obviously, it's people 401ks and people trying to invest in ETFs are the ones getting killed, but the right people are making money, right? But I just want to make sure that we're the right people. But what's going on with the tariffs, right? That is becoming an issue. And on Friday, he did announce exemptions on tariffs. He mentioned it on Friday, but I'm gonna get into that. The reactions last week that we got, gold hit all-time highs, right? With dollar reacting and hitting all-time lows, equities pretty much was just range bound for the rest of the remaining of the week. We just saw equities just ended up in sideways price action. I will show you the chart in a minute. Moving forward, right, you're going to want to focus on tariff talks, right? Like, how is tariffs going to continue? Is it going to escalate, or is it going to start de-escalating? Geopolitical tensions between the U.S., right, and Gaza and Israel is extremely important. We want to see an end in the war and conflict, geopolitical tensions, right? Also, ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine. We want to see how that's going on too, because escalations in wars is still going on as well, along on top of tariffs, right? It seems like all hell is just breaking loose. So, what we want to pay attention to moving forward, when it comes to economic data. So Monday we have Australia's meeting minutes. Typically, the meeting minutes is like a few weeks after the rate decision. The meeting minutes just goes over what happened during that rate decision. Sometimes things can change during the meeting minutes if economic data change or any fundamental reasons changed, then we could see a change in sentences during the meeting minutes that could lead to an opportunity. But this is over Asian session. Sometimes we don't really get an opportunity when it comes to that, because Australia, the AUD currency is a risk, is a safe, is a risk asset, right? So it's been reacting very beautifully to risk sentiment. When we see escalations in trade wars, right? AUD gets weaker. When we see commodities are pushing lower, like oil and copper, we see iron ore pushing lower. China's taking a hit. AUD is a good currency to sell when all of these things are going on. Tuesday, we got UK labor data. So that's going to be extremely important on Tuesday for London session for you guys that's trading the GBP currency, because you're going to get a really good idea on which direction the pound currency could go. Wednesday, we have the rate decision for the Bank of Canada. Not really expecting much to happen from the last rate decision, because there's no solution when it comes to tariffs, right? So they probably would still cut rates, but nothing has really changed during trade talks, right? Tariff talks. So it's a possibility we could see that today. We could see that that rate decision doesn't really it doesn't really do much. Okay, so go figure when it comes to that. Now we can see that we got UK CPI after that. So that's another good opportunity for a London session. So you guys focusing on the GBP currency, you could trade US CPI, UK CPI during London session. Then that New York session, we're going to have Fed Powell's speech. It's important to figure out first, is he going to be talking about monetary policy. Because if he's not talking about monetary policy, then typically, you know, not really worth the speech. But his commentary on monetary policy would be important. When it comes to Powell, he's not going to speak on Trump. He's not going to speak on physical policy, meaning government, what the government is doing. He's going to try to remain neutral and have a bias when it comes to that. So I would recommend just being aware of what he says if he talks on inflation and labor. Thursday, we have the ECB rate decision. Again, trade wars is also impacting Europe, right? So it's more likely nothing is going to really come from this meeting because we have a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the trade wars with the US. And if this uncertainty is still there hasn't been no solutions. So heading towards Thursday, it's going to be important to see what happens. But probably another rate decision that's just another kick the can down the road meeting. But these rate decisions, I'm also going to trade it live with my private group. And typically when I do with these meetings, like I like to go to the news prep and give trade ideas. Like this is like an example for the last rate decision for the RBA. So we could have an idea on how to take advantage of that. I would do that the date of the rate decision. And then we're going to obviously trade it live together. If you guys are interested, just click on the link in the bottom if you want to join the private group. Now, where I was at moving forward for the week, we got US jobless claims. We get that every week. So nothing really major when it comes to that. And on Friday, just going here, Friday, we have a holiday. So it's going to be Good Friday, full day closures. I don't like trading on Fridays, on holidays. So I would recommend take the Friday off if nothing changes. But hey, when it comes to Trump, you never know, right? If he says something to escalate the markets, you never know. But I think Friday, end of Thursday and Friday, probably be the perfect time to see some crazy headlines coming out. All right, guys. So hopefully, you got a good understanding. So this week, it's what happened today with news. It's important, guys, because the important headlines are here. So remember on Friday, they announced exemptions, right? That there was going to be some sort of leeway negotiations. He came out before New York session, right? Before market open on Asian, he came out and said there was no tariff exemptions announced on Friday when we saw the headline. So was you hacked? Like he act like people don't don't read, you know? So it sucks that I like it when they do that because it gives us a direction, right? We just need to see if price action follows the direction. So this should continue to give us escalations in the markets, which should give us more of a risk off market. China calls, because this is important because next China and the US is going to be having phone calls about tariffs and trying to do some negotiations, right? Let's see when these talks happen, are we going to actually see any de-escalations when it comes to trade wars between the US and China? That is the main focus for the markets, guys. If we could see that those talks are ending positive, right, then we're going to see a risk on market. That's going to be positive for the equity markets. If we see that they don't have no solution, just continue to ride this gravy train of recessionary fears and all of that to come, okay? Because I want you guys to be able to understand what's going on because it's been the same stuff since he got elected, right? It's been the same stuff every single day. We have to understand it by now, right? Understand the direction of the markets by now because the markets are showing us how it reacts to these type of headlines, okay? Now we can see that Trump says semiconductors, computers, and smartphones from China will still be subjected to 20% tariffs. I don't know how that's going to be good for NASDAQ, but that's going to be something we're going to have to pay attention to see if we could get a risk off market moving forward. Right. So I got some more headlines, about Trump says there's no one is getting off the hook, unfair trade, and that there were no tariff exemptions on Friday. So that's again with the semiconductor. And this is why I give you guys an idea. And then he put this on Truth Social. So that is actually him saying it, right? There's no tariff exemptions that was on Friday. These products that still exist at 20% fentanyl tariffs, right? Just moving in a different tariff bucket. The fake news knows this, but refused to report it. So just went against everything he said on Friday, right? So be prepared. Like if we see a risk off market, guys, don't be shocked if we see it, okay? Especially over the rest of Asian session. But let me just continue this before we go to the markets, right? So this is earnings. So if you guys understand, we got bank earnings coming up. Typically, is like a good indicator to see if we have any recessionary fears going on, right? If banks are worried, if we see that banking numbers is giving us a problem, right? Then more likely we're going to see some more recessionary reactions in the markets. One second, guys. Bum bum bum. All right. So that's how I like to focus when it comes to banks. Like Goldman Sachs is going to be important. Bank of America, Citi, those are definitely important as well. But that, just like a more of an indicator. That's really what it is about. So we got the Fed speakers list. Pretty much I update you guys throughout when I see those headlines, I will update you guys. But most people focus on New York session. So as you could just see here, you got every Fed speaker that's speaking out this week. So you know the time. So if you're in a trade, just make sure that these headlines don't impact you. Typically, they really don't, right? Markets have just been more focused on Donald Trump more than anything. So, hey, if they speak whatever they say, who cares? As long as it's nothing like you just still want to get their idea on like on interest rates, right? If they're the Feds are still more likely looking to pause rates, so not really gonna expect them to say anything different. Okay, so moving forward now, looking at the markets. I just want you guys to see because when if we get a risk off market right now, this is how I want to see the markets react, right? So I want us to look at currency space, and I want to see if AUD, NZD, and CAD, right? I want to see those pairs push lower. More likely Asian session after 9 p.m. Eastern, right? Asia Pac open. Let's see if we could see these pairs push lower to the headlines. And then we could see like JPY and Swiss push up and these pairs push in this direction, right? Throughout the rest of Asian. If we could get that, that will be the first signal that we want that the markets is going to be reacting negatively towards Trump's headlines, right? When we see the currency space move in that direction. Secondly, I would like for us to focus on commodities, right? Especially like copper. We see silver pushing lower, oil. If I want to see all of the commodity pairs right here pushing bearish, if we could see copper pushing lower, silver is pushing lower. When iron ore opens, we see iron ore pushing lower. Shit, even Bitcoin pushing lower, natural gas pushing lower. If we could see oil dropping, especially if oil could drop below 60 again, that's going to be the biggest sign of fears coming into the markets. Is if we could see copper pushing lower and oil. That will be the biggest sign that we want that the markets is actually caring about the negative comments that Trump posted. Then we could start looking at equities, right? We will start seeing equities as a whole, like US 30. We'll see US 30 pushing lower, NASDAQ pushing lower, S&P is pushing lower, right? We will see even foreign like Europe, German, we'll see the UK 100 pushing lower. Once we see that, that's a full blown recessionary fear, right? That's a full blown risk off market. If you're trading equities like NASDAQ, for an example, we did gap up higher, but technically we want to see price stay below 18,700. If we could stay below that zone, it's going to give us a higher probability that we could start coming down to 18,500 or even pushing lower to 18,200, right? I would like to see more sells below this structure. Anything below 18,200 would probably give us that signal that we're seeing more sells coming in place. But if you were looking for a technical entry, I would like to see after 9 p.m. market opens, unless probably people is probably already in sales right now, right? But we want to see price stay below 18,700. And that's going to give us a better idea of sales staying in place. Okay. Because we're going to start seeing, like, we're going to get this low. This is that lower high. And then we're going to start probably making a new low again if we see completely the markets act risk off. If we don't see any of that, right? And then we see any positive headlines, there's just a higher probability we'll probably see commodity equities push up higher again if the markets take it as a positive, which I highly doubt. And even though that I said that about Nasdaq, it's the same thing with US 30, right? Market structure pretty much the same, you know. So I would like to see price staying below the area of 40,000 or 4,100, because once we start breaking below structure, it's just a higher probability we're going to start seeing price push lower. And obviously, if we start breaking below 39,100, if things are still negative, we can still look for continuation sells. And that's if you guys are probably not in sales. If you're in sales already, you're probably already eating because you understand that those Trump headlines was extremely negative. So we should be seeing a little bit of pullbacks right now. But if we still see price respect this zone, which is going to be key, and we see some positive headlines, right? If price stays back above 4,200, then more likely we'll see some more upside, only if we don't see that risk off market. All right, guys. So just remember, we need to see the markets act as a whole in order for you guys to take that trade. So now remember when I was like, look at commodities, right? So I personally, you got to wait to see how gold is going to react. I like the idea of gold continuing to break structure. We already have a nice range here overall, right? I still personally think wait until those key times, right? After Asia Pac Open, because if gold breaks below 32.10, you could probably take a nice scalp to 32,200 or 32,190, right? 3190. But then start looking for the possibility of buys coming back into place, right? Because this also, if the China escalations is still there, we understand this, all this bullish upside started when China imposed tariffs on the US, escalating tariffs. So long as that is still being an issue, right? Even breaking above 32,440 with that risk off market, seeing equities push lower. This is going to set up for better buys. You could look for safer buys above 32.40. If we see price don't break lower, we start breaking above higher after that time, 9 p.m. And you want to start taking those buys as the risk off market is still coming in place, you could do that. If we get a pullback, look at these zones, right? Especially like 3170, like once we hit these zone areas for a possibility of price pushing back up. So these are the areas of interest. And I want you guys to, like, when I'm drawing these zones out, just put it in your chart so you know exactly what to look for, and then have those areas, give those areas alerts so you know exactly what to pay attention to, what I said with equities and what I said with gold. Okay. So obviously if you could take sells again if you choose to, like just in case if nothing follows, right? And we break below 2010, you could take a sell scalp. I'll be against it. I don't like training against the bias, but if we see a break structure, you could take that sell scalp, to the zone. You could do that because you're probably going to be guaranteed between 20 to 50 pips once you get a break of structure, but just try not to marry it yet. You could take the trade, hold it if we see that price action is still breaking lower, but only if the markets is not risk off, right? Because if we don't see market fear, right, then you could probably look for those gold sells, but just be vigilant of price action. Okay, so that's what you just have to be aware of. So now covering with that, the next pair that I want you guys to focus on too is because when we got all these headlines coming in, right? Market fear, GJ could be a good pair, right? That you could focus on looking for potential sells. If we see that the yen starts gaining strength, it has to start gaining strength, right? And we have to see a risk off market. And then you can start looking for sells on GJ at that time. And then also, if you want, you could start looking at a pair like AUD USD, AUD JPY, sorry, breaking below 9,200, right? Because this AUD JPY is like the best pair to show you risk sentiment if we're having a risk off market or a risk on market. If we see AUD JPY is breaking support, then that's just a higher probability we see in a risk off market, and you could take advantage of a pair like that. All right, guys. So just want to give you guys this quick update for the weekly prep, right? And you know right now what to focus on for the week, important economic data that we have going on. We know that this Trump situation is now impacting market open. Right now, patience is going to be key. Set those areas of interest and then just execute today. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, right? I'm always here to help you guys. Have a good one.